Hi, I'm Jordan, and this is Whiskey for the People. In this video, we're going to be talking about Thomas H. Handy and whether there really is a good alternative to this bottle. I have a couple of popular recommendations as stand-ins for this here, and I wanted to put these to the test and really see how they fared in a blind. I also poured a recommendation of my own that I'll reveal once we get to the blind here in a bit, but yeah, let's talk about these. So this was recommended by Fred Minnick a while back, and this is the Knob Creek Cask Strength Rye. This is the 2018 release that was distilled in 2009, and the math adds up where the press release says that this is 9-year-old whiskey. This is coming in at 119.6 proof. And yeah, I've had this for a couple years, and I got to admit, off of memory alone, I don't necessarily think of this whiskey when I think of a stand-in for Thomas H. Handy. And I think one thing that's important to emphasize here is that just because whiskeys are comparable on paper with age and, mash bills, whatever have you, that doesn't necessarily translate when it comes to the drinking experience or what the whiskey really tastes like. And that's something that I really want to discuss here a little bit and kind of point out as we go through this blind and go over these whiskeys. Just because something is a comparable price, comparable age, whatever, doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, that it's a good alternative. I think we're really a little bit loose with that word. And when we recommend these things, I think we need to be careful not to set the expectation that this is kind of a similar whiskey or that it's in lieu of this other whiskey. And I don't think that is mentioned enough. And people may do a disclaimer here and there, but we really want to set the record straight, especially with these two whiskeys. And yeah, let's talk about the Sagamore 8-year here. This is the 2023 release. So this is the newest one. I believe they did one in 2022. But this is an MGP sourced rye. However, it is not just the standard 95.5 MGP mash bill, rye mash bill. This also has a blend of the 51% rye MGP mash bill. And so it's got a little bit of its own thing going on as compared to most MGP ryes. And yeah, this is the 2022 Thomas H. Handy. This is coming in at 130.9. And when it comes to whiskey in general, this is probably one of the better whiskeys I've ever had, specifically this 2022 bottling. And yeah, we'll see if these can even fare, but they've got their work cut out for them. So let's go ahead and get into the blind here. And on the nose, with this first whiskey, I'm getting some of those bright green grassy notes. Maybe in behind that even kind of goes to a hay. Maybe gets a little bit dry or a little bit just slightly dusty. Maybe a little bit of ethanol. Okay, let's taste it. Okay, yeah. That is much more alive on the palate than that is on the nose. That whiskey has a lot of nice honey, a lot of nice, it's a little bit thin, but it still reminds me of maybe a really well, maybe almost broken cream. Maybe like it's been whipped till it kind of broke and it's gotten a little bit thin. But yeah, the rye is there, but you can definitely tell that this is not an extremely high rye mash bill. This is flirting with that barely legal rye on my palate, at least. I think I have an idea of what this one is, but let's go to the second one here, and we'll make another round back. So this right away has more going on the nose. Yeah, this has some fruit on the nose. That's a big standout to me when compared to that first glass. And it also just has this kind of funk, this X Factor thing going on. That reminds me of Buffalo Trace products. It kind of have this quintessential profile that is, in my opinion, a sweet vinegary type of thing going on. It's definitely got a funk to it. It's not just sweet oak. It's not just fruity. And it's not just that kind of upper register profile that they have. There's this funk to it that has some heft or maybe a kind of chewiness or a denseness to it that I get that's always prevalent even on the nose. So let's give this a taste. Okay, yeah. So this is even more alive, or better put, kind of more explosive on the palate. Definitely well coating. I think if I had to compare this to the first whiskey, this definitely has a little more resistance to it, a little more viscosity. The mouth feels great. The finish is great. It's still going on. This one definitely has a little more feedback to it on the finish, a little more prickly, or a little bit, a little bit more active, so to speak. And yeah, it just keeps going. It's that bright, fruity, punchy rye that reminds me again of Buffalo Trace. It makes me kind of think of a amped up Sazerac 6-year rye. But this rye, I think it has a little bit of mint, but it's mainly that that more developed, almost rye bread. It's kind of a heftier, like I was saying earlier, with that funk. A little bit darker. It's not so super refreshing or minty or whatever. It's a little more kind of bread and butter thing going on. So let's go ahead and go to the glass. After that, glass 3 here. Yeah. So if I were a betting man, I think it would be safe to say you could wager the farm that this is Thomas H. Handy. This is just rye candy, super dense, super bold, leaps out of the glass. It's got a spectrum of everything going on. The sweet profile to it is everything from confectionery to molassesy and everything in between. It's got that almost piercing kind of mint herbal quality, but it also has, again, those kind of darker, bready, heftier notes going on. It let's try it one more time on the nose here before we go for a taste. Yeah, it's just so cohesive. It's got so much going on, but it's all well integrated, and you can definitely take that that deep, dark, cherryish kind of note that's rarely found in ryes and pick it out, I think, right away as compared to at least the first 2 glasses. Let's taste this. Yeah, it doesn't really get much better than that. That is one of the better whiskeys I've had. And I'm a rye fan, so I'm a little bit partial. But yeah, so that just coats the entire palate. I mean, everything from the roof of my mouth into my jaws, kind of the back of the throat. The finish is just evolving and evolving. All of these sweeter, darker notes are kind of rising up and kind of mellowing out and getting a little bit lighter as this thing keeps on. And just my whole mouth is still tingling from this whiskey. It definitely drinks extremely big in terms of flavor, but as far as the proof, this is very, very drinkable at 130. You would definitely be fooled by the proof on this one, but the flavor is just so huge. It's definitely 130 proof to pack that. So yeah, I think this one is giving me some context on the first 2 as well. I think I've got my guesses so far. Let's try this 4th glass, because by process of elimination here, I think I know what this one is. And it's thrown me for a loop because if this is what I think it is, I don't remember it coming off with so much of this kind of acetone or you know, very ethanol, alcohol, really sharp and you know, bitter kind of thing here. There's kind of a wall of that going on, and it's pretty hard to get past, actually. I mean, any of these whiskeys that I've had individually on their own, I don't really recall it being this strong, but that's the point of a blind, right? And put some things in context. Yeah, in behind that, if you sit there, you definitely get some darker kind of caramel notes, definitely an oak presence. This is an older rye. It's had some time in barrel, or it's had a lot of barrel influence. Let's put it that way. None of these are secondary finish, so I'm going to believe that the color here and what I'm picking up is definitely age and time in that barrel. So let's taste it. Yeah, thankfully that the acetone note doesn't translate as much to the palate. But I will say that the palate's not too big on that one. Let's try another sip really quick here. See if now that I'm acquainted, we get anything else. And I will say, after I've tasted out on the palate, the nose, that acetone has subsided a bit. Yeah. Now, even on that second sip on the palate, it's falling maybe a little more flat than it did before. Not a ton going on for me here, especially coming off of that that third glass. I do get some herbal notes. I mean, it's very clearly a rye, but in terms of anything distinctive or that's standing out or wowing me, I'm not getting a lot here. And that alcohol, ethanol, whatever, is kind of starting to creep back in. Yeah, this is... For any of the whiskeys I've poured, this is pretty remarkably bland to me. Wow, none of these on their own have drank this unimpressively, whatever it'd be, to me before. Let's go back through really quick for a final nose and taste of each of these and see if I can put this all into context and make my guesses here. So yeah, that brighter grassy note that I told you kind of has some hay or a little bit of a drier quality to it afterwards. It's a little more kind of warm, golden, maybe toasted grains. Again, I'm getting that kind of bread thing coming out a little more on this, whereas this was just very, very bright initially for me. And then on the palate, that sweetness is kind of calmed down just a little bit, and it's given way to some more herbal notes. I'm getting more from that kind of smells like fresh herbs from the garden, maybe some parsley, just stuff that you would chop up and get a few aromas from here. It does have a little more funk now than it did. It seems like there's this almost yeasty. It reminds me of kind of a warm beer thing going on. You may think I'm crazy for saying it, but this definitely reminds me of Jim Beam peanut. that Nutty Jim Beam thing. So I'm definitely going to guess that this glass, which is glass C, or the first glass, is the Knob Creek here. Let's go to the second glass. And yeah, wow. That fruity, sugary, sweet, vinegary, funky thing is even more prevalent on glass 2 now, the second time around. And this just reminds me so much of just Buffalo Trace profiles in general, whether it's their rye or their mash bill 1, 2, the wheated, whatever. They all seem to have that brighter, fruitier, sugary, sweet profile thing going on. Yeah, so I believe this is my recommendation. Let me try and wrap this thing up here quick. Glass 3, I mean, I don't even need to taste it, but I'm going to because I'd love to. So good. This is the Thomas H. Handy for sure. No doubt in my mind on that. Let's get a little bit of water. I'm going to try and make this quick. I think I've got like a minute on my camera here. Yeah, this is just shoe polish. I'm sorry, is what it is. Yeah. By process of elimination or deduction here, I'm going to guess that which is glass D is the Sagamore. So let me talk about my recommendation really quick here. This is Hard Truth. And actually, I'm going to try and cut this and then restart the camera so that I don't lose what I've worked towards. All right, so as I was saying, this is Hard Truth. This is a company, or a distillery rather, out of Nashville, Indiana. It is not Nashville, Tennessee, and it is not Lawrenceburg, Indiana. This is Nashville, Indiana. This is their own distillate, and this is their sweet mash rye. And so this is actually quite a young whiskey. And this one here is batch number 2, and it came in at 116 proof. They say their batch sizes are 30 barrels, and it is, again, a sweet mash rye. So what that essentially means is, between their distillation processes, they clean out all the equipment. They don't use anything from the previous distillation or batch to jumpstart their new batch. They start from scratch. And so that's the difference between a sweet mash and a sour mash in a nutshell here. And they've chosen to use sweet mash is one of their signature things, it seems. And again, so these are young. I believe these are between 2 and 3 years of age. And these whiskeys are awesome. I've got a couple different batches, and they just hit my local area, even though I was able to get a few bottles before they hit here. And I'm thrilled about them. They're very expensive for young whiskey. These go between $60 and $80 at retail, depending on your area and distribution. And that is a lot for a whiskey that can be under 3 years of age. Or really any whiskey in general. But I've had great luck with this bottle. I've really enjoyed it. I was skeptical of it at first, thought I was crazy to spend the money, but I did, and I really enjoyed it. And I actually have, I believe, Mash and Drum to thank for that. And that's a little bit of a ironic thing, considering I believe Mash and Drum is also who most popularly recommended that Sagamore Spirits. But yes, so let's get to the key here. Let's go over this blind. Let's see. The first glass that I drank here is glass C, and I guessed it was Knob Creek, and that is correct. It is Knob Creek. And yeah, I remember this glass based off of that, or this whiskey rather, based off of that grassy note. That is the one thing that sticks out to me. Every time I come to this whiskey, one of the first things I get is a little bit of sharp grass. It just reminds me of being a kid and picking grass and kind of chewing on it. Don't know what you did when you were a kid, but that's what I was doing. And yeah, it just kind of has that almost acidic type of grassy note thing going on. And it's good, but it's nothing great. It's nothing incredibly special. It's just a good cast strength rye whiskey. and I appreciate it for that. And for the price I paid for it, I think it was $60. Absolutely. I think it's a great rye whiskey, and I think it's fun, especially for people who haven't tried any cask strength things, to give them something that's just super middle of the road. It's just rye with the volume turned up a little bit. But yeah, in terms of anything special, this really, this isn't special to me. And especially coming alongside this Thomas H. Handy here, it needs to be special if it's a good alternative to Thomas H. Handy, because Thomas H. Handy, to me, is an incredibly special rye. It's one of the most special ryes. So as an alternative, do I think that this really fits the bill? No, I don't. I see how on paper, a cask strength rye with a cask strength rye that's got more than a few years of age on it would make sense, but I don't really think this is a great alternative when it comes to recommending something as an experience that would be similar or in lieu of this Thomas H. Handy. So let's go to glass number 2 here, which I believed was my recommendation, the Hard Truth. And this is glass B. And yes, that is the Hard Truth. So the big thing about this, and I said it, and I was kind of hesitant as I was saying it, because I was like, well, man, that's a little bit bold to say, and it kind of gives up the ghost. People are going to think that this may not be actually a blind and that you're just kind of selling the whiskey. Well, the reality of it is this is the only whiskey, and I say that with hesitation and with a sincere bit of feedback with it. This is the only whiskey I've had, rye, bourbon, whatever, regardless of any mash bill, that seems to have a similar profile to Buffalo Trace products in general. And that was the biggest thing that stood out to me about the Hard Truth when I first tried it, was, wow, this seems like Buffalo Trace. You could fool me with this in a blind and say that this was Buffalo Trace distillate, and I would probably buy it. The thing that makes that so interesting is that this being a rye with its mash bill, and I do believe that this is a lower rye mash bill, as in it's not closer to 90-something%. I think this is closer to 50-something% if I had to guess, and I probably need to do a little more research on that. But I think this whiskey, in terms of an experience, in terms of the nose, the profile, the way it drinks, as bold as it is, both on the nose and the palate, the finish, the way it kind of evolves. This, when I first drank it, my words verbatim were, this is a baby Thomas H. Handy. And that's why I'd recommend it, because none of the other whiskeys I've ever had, no other rye whiskey, has ever reminded me of Thomas H. Handy besides this one. And I think that is the most fundamental alternative to another whiskey, is something that reminds you of that whiskey, especially something that kind of carries that profile and reminds you of the profile in general. I think that is an essential element to something if you're going to be recommending it as a alternative to it. So let's go to glass 3, which I'm confident that A will be Thomas H. Handy here. And it is, no doubt. And yeah, I mean, what more can I say about this? This is about as good as whiskey in general, in my opinion, gets. This is about as good as it gets. This is extremely well developed, and to have these whiskeys, these ryes in Thomas H. Handy, come in at 6 or so years of age. I believe they're mostly between 6 and 7 years of age, year after year, with this incredible color, the flavor, and just the intensity and the boldness, the leap out of the glass type of quality that it has. It's incredible. And that's why it is so good. That's why people like it so much. And that's why you can charge $100 MSRP for a 6-year whiskey, and people think that that's undervalued. And it's true, because it drinks incredibly well. It's a very well-developed whiskey, and I don't think there's much to fault it with, at least not this 2022 especially. So let's get to the final glass here, this fourth glass. And yeah, this is D, and naturally this would have to be the Sagamore. And so this is really weird for me, because I really don't think this whiskey on its own, this 8-year, the 2023, and this says it is batch 2A, bottle 9625. I don't think this bottle on its own drinks the way it does in a blind. And that's probably a good topic for a different video. But something that comes to mind often too, when I watch people's reviews or especially see them doing blinds, they talk about how something doesn't fare well in the blind. They're surprised that this beat this out. And it's really strange, because I don't know how I feel about saying a whiskey is or isn't something in the context of other whiskeys, because I don't know what that really means. I mean, if you pour this whiskey and it's great on its own, isn't that enough? You know, why does that need to be compared to everything else? And when it is compared, I mean, just between the chemistry and the way things work with your palate, and just wanting to enjoy what you have, I don't know that this stuff is about which whiskey is best, so to speak. That seems like a waste of whiskey if you would enjoy it more a different way. And the main thing is that you're just enjoying the whiskey you have and appreciating it for what it is. But it is interesting to do these things. I think it does lend some insight, and it helps you to get to know these whiskeys a little bit better or see them in a different light. But as far as a good alternative to Thomas H. Handy, is there a good alternative to Thomas H. Handy? In my opinion, there isn't. There isn't. And that's a good thing. That means that Thomas H. Handy has its own thing going on, and that's probably why people like it so much. But if there was a good alternative to Thomas H. Handy, in my opinion, I believe this Hard Truth is the best alternative you could have for it with what's available on the market today. So, wrapping things up, do I think that these are great stand-ins, this Sagamore, this Knob Creek? No, I don't. Quite frankly, as much as I appreciate some of the information and the opinions of the people who have recommended these as a good alternative, it doesn't make any sense at all to me. I guess on paper, the fact that they're both under $100 and they're aged more than 4 or 5 years, and they're cask strength, that makes sense. But that's kind of like saying this person's exactly like another person, or, well, that's not what they're saying. But it's like saying someone is a good stand-in for another person, let's say in a job or a task or whatever, because they're both human and they have, arms and legs. That's not really what we're going for here, right? We're talking about a specific task. And when it comes to trying to match the profile of this Thomas H. Handy and to give you a similar experience, I think, in my opinion, out of these 4 whiskeys, blind and on their own, I believe this Hard Truth, and I'm just going to smell them back to back here as we close out. Yeah, the Hard Truth is just a little bit younger, little bit muted, or the volume turned down slightly, Thomas H. Handy to me on profile. This is night and day different on the Knob Creek, and then the Sagamore is even more different. So is there a good alternative to this? Now that I'm stumbling over my words and reiterating myself for the 100th time, no. But if there was one, it would be this. Cheers. Thanks for watching.